Hello, this is Swipe. Recognise this crossing? We're at the famous Abbey Road Studios.
Who needs strings? Is this the future for guitars? I get a lesson in playing virtually any instrument I like. And our games review is in for a musical overhaul too this week.
Welcome to a very musical Swipe from the world's most famous recording studios. From the Beatles to Lady Gaga, big names have been making music history here for more than 80 years. And now it's also become home to a different kind of sound, something I'll be looking at a bit later on. But before then, Chris has been taking a look at the way technology is helping beginners learn to play music.
This product's giving new meaning to air guitar. Curve uses a wireless pick for strumming and a touchpad as a fretboard. The kit links to a smartphone app which you plug into your speakers so you can rock away. It's meant to make it easier for beginners to get into music.
The Curve is aimed at people who perhaps don't have time to play the guitar or learn the guitar, but have always wanted to. Our product simplifies some of the elements of guitar playing. We keep the tradition of the pick, so we have that as part of the product, but we simplify the process of holding down chord shapes so that you can do it just with one finger or a group of fingers in a much more simple way.
Virtual reality is another way developers want to help novices get started. Software like this lets you create compositions of your own through hand gestures.
It's actually pretty easy for people who don't play an instrument or may not even be very musical to pick it up and start playing. I don't think that a virtual instrument is ever going to replace a real instrument. I hope they don't. I see a virtual instrument as being an alternative. It's a new class, a new branch of instrument that doesn't have the same physical limitations as a real instrument does.
So if products like these aren't intended to compete with the real thing, do they really stand a chance of taking off?
I think these virtual instruments are a bit of a sort of gimmicky gadget for beginners. You know, they're not really going to get a real sense of the actual instrument you want to learn, you know, the feel of it, where you need to put your fingers, and also the musicality, because it's all sort of done for you. I think, you know, if you really want to learn to play an instrument, you need to pick one up and just practice and practice and practice.
For years now, people have been using tech to teach themselves how to play instruments. Smartphone apps are already a go-to tool for the aspiring musician. And there's plenty of how-to videos on YouTube to show you the ropes. With all this help already available, virtual instruments may seem like an unnecessary step in the learning process. But if you're keen to get jamming with no strings attached, then they could provide a fun alternative. Chris Creegan, Sky News.
I wonder how many of those instruments we'll see in history books of the future. Now, still to come. We get the party started here at Abbey Road. Well, kind of. But first, here's a roundup of some of this week's other tech news.
An amputee in the US is now able to control his prosthetic arm just by thinking about it. Johnny Matheny lost his forearm because of cancer. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University have come up with a technique using wireless myo armbands, which read the muscle activation signals in the upper part of his arm. He thinks about how he wants to move his arm. That triggers activity in his muscle, which ends up directing the artificial limb to move however he likes. A new app designed to help us de-stress uses your smartphone camera to help bring you back into balance. Music for Moods measures your pulse when you put your finger on your camera and gives you breathing instructions plus calming music designed to apparently bring your heart rate variability to an optimal level. While we're feeling peaceful, could this be tech's answer to dealing with your partner's snoring? Noise-cancelling rechargeable earplugs called Quiet-On have launched on crowdfunding site Indiegogo. The makers say they give top-class noise cancellation with up to 50 hours battery life. Still to come, the music plays on in our games review.
There's so much history here. Look at this. It's one of the world's first stereo tape machines built by EMI purely for Abbey Road. This place is famous for pushing boundaries, and it's no different today. They've even got an incubator scheme for tech startups, and I went to have a go on its first project.
I bet you didn't know I could play the harp. Well, actually, I'm just waving my hands around. It's this, the pulse, that's detecting my movements with a 3D sensor, turning them into whatever instrument I like.
Does it change if I get closer?
Yes.
Arnie here is one of the inventors.
What we're trying to do, so instead of having to learn a new way of playing, we aggregated all the different ways you have to play natural instruments, like strumming or just moving around in the air, like you'd have virtual strings. So you're playing it, and you don't really need a long time for learning a new interface. We use real life interactions and made them virtual.
So really, that's very cool. So you're just changing the settings on the app so that it corresponds with the 3D sensor, and it knows that I'm holding drumsticks and it's not my hands. It's not a harp.
It's as easy as this. You just pick your app, knowing what you want to do, and the app will make it a different instrument.
And who did you design this for?
We designed this for every musician. Today it's very difficult to accumulate a lot of musical instruments in a small space. It needs to be silent, and also the digital instruments are not a great experience for musicians. So we try to make something more refined, more swifter and higher speed, higher resolution, and more intelligent. The closer I get, the more volume I will have in the sound. I can control the volume, and multiple axes can control different aspects of the sound. You can try it.
Ooh.
Arnie's company, Titan Reality, is the first to get a place on Abbey Road's incubator programme in its innovation department, RED, supporting promising music tech startups.
This is addictive.
The landscape has changed massively. The music industry has been heavily disrupted. So this is our way of kind of repositioning ourselves so that we're involved in new technology again. We've had an amazing history of innovation here. This is just the kind of continuation of that story. It's very much the updated version of what we've always been doing.
You can also use pulse to control lights.
Wow, that'd be great for a party.
Lights, please.
Just a shame we don't have any guests.
Now from playing instruments to playing games. What a link. And with music being the theme of this week's show, we thought we'd take a look at a few tune-filled titles for this week's Games Review. Here's Steve.
The Rocksmith series, of course, differentiated itself in the market by, rather than just having some plastic instrument that was a bit like a guitar, they let you plug an actual guitar into your console using an adapter, which seems like potentially a great way to learn guitar if you're somebody who's never played but maybe is interested. But actually, for a lot of people, I think it can be a bit overwhelming because games are hard enough anyway. Trying to learn a guitar, you feel like you're failing at the game because you're still learning, even though they do a lot to try to help you, learn all the little basic tips and tricks for playing the instrument. Of course, music games aren't just about playing the music. We've also got the dancing genre that's become a big thing with Just Dance and Dance Central obviously becoming two of the main players over the last few years. Back in the day, when we first started to see dance games, it was those arcade cabinets with the arrows on the floor, and it wasn't so much dancing as it was trying to memorise which way was left so you could stamp on the thing. Whereas these days, obviously, with the PlayStation Camera and Xbox Kinect, the games are actually watching you dance. Before all of these games that have these peripherals or motion sensors for dancing or dance mats or any of those things, we did have music games that were just played with a bog standard controller. One of my favourites was Amplitude, back on the PS2. In 2014, Harmonix did a Kickstarter campaign which was successful, so we've just had in the last week or so a new version of Amplitude released for PS3 and PS4, which is brilliant. If you've not played it before, basically you get different tracks and you're flying a spaceship along these tracks and you're just tapping buttons in time with the music, and so you'll unlock, say, the drum beat or a vocal or the bass line. So you sort of build up the song by doing all of these things in sequence and just try to get to the end. It sounds insane, but it's genuinely a lot of fun and really, really addictive.
Well, that's it from here at Abbey Road Studios for this week. Take a look at Sky News on mobile and iPad throughout the week for all the latest tech stories, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.